Is Sean King, and I am the principal at Aspire Arts and Events Marketing. And we welcome everyone who has joined us today for our 1 hour session on the building blocks of brand. We had an excellent registration leading up to today's event, and I hope that we'll be able to answer some questions, pose some interesting thoughts to you, and otherwise have a real robust conversation regarding branding. So to begin our session here today, I'd like to introduce myself to you. My name is Sean King. I am the principal at Aspire Arts and Events Marketing. I've been working with small and medium-sized businesses and nonprofits for over 25 years. The marketing chairperson for downtown Allentown, Pennsylvania, where I am based, about 60 miles north of Philadelphia, 90 miles west of New York City, and currently undergoing about $1 billion worth of redevelopment. We've been working very closely with the Chamber of Commerce and also the arts councils in the region on a strategic plan, which has kind of formulated a lot of our ideas and a lot of the concepts that we're going to be sharing with you here today. I've tried to be able to connect that real world energy with our presentations and our sessions as we go. I am also a presenter for international festivals and events, American Fundraising Professionals, and Arts Reach, as well as Pennsylvania Council on the Arts. You can follow me along at artsmarketingblog.org or on Twitter at King Aspire. Always trying to tweet out and come up with some more ideas and share some more concepts and hear more feedback about what you're doing and how can we answer those questions and create more content for everyone in kind of a professional development and capacity building. It seems like there's a lot of people involved in arts marketing, a tremendous amount of people involved in events marketing. There's great people involved with community development with the Chambers of Commerce and the Visitors and Convention Bureau. So we feel like we're doing a service out there in being able to work with individuals such as yourselves on the ability to learn the best practices. What are the tips and the tricks and the trends that are affecting our businesses and our organizations and our events, and how do we do a better job, and what are some of the things that we shouldn't pay attention to. We have a mentorship program which is new, and I encourage you to check that out. Our email and contact information is at the bottom of every one of these slides. So without any further ado, we're going to slide on into what we're going to do today, and that is we have some definitions of brand. We've got sponsors in brands, and especially in the festival and event associations, their branding and the relationship between brands and sponsors are very, very important. We have mission versus brand. That's an interesting conversation, especially for my friends in the nonprofit zone. We have a couple of exercises. Some are kind of takeaways for you to do, and I'd love to have you request the slides, and I can send these out to you if you're so interested in following up on any of these particular exercises that we have in store for you today. This session will also be recorded, and we'll post that on our website so that you can check it out and maybe revisit it at another time. Plus, a little bit different, we are going to be rebroadcasting this particular session live next Tuesday night at 7 p.m. With so many folks in the volunteer role in the events and festivals world. It seems like it'll be really great for us to be able to reach out to those entities and be able to do something after hours. So many of those people can't make this their professional endeavor, but they still want to learn what we have to talk about. And hopefully we'll have a whole bunch of questions. So to get started on brand, everyone knows what this brand is. This brand is, of course, Nike. As I understand it, it's now just signed a lifetime contract with LeBron James worth $1 billion or possibly more. So what does that brand mean? What does that look like? Seth Godin, my someone who I aspire and follow a lot of his writings and teachings, says that this logo was designed for less than $50, and they probably paid too much. But when you see that, you know what that means. If you're a Nike wearer, you know what that shoe feels like, or if you're wearing the clothing, you know what that feels like. It's a certain there's a certain component that you can't really put your finger on, but that is what brand is. That is, and the logo here is really the way that they share all of those things, so that it's about speed, it's about fitness, it's about endurance, it's about winning, it's all of those things. And but how do they do that? Just through one small graphic. So we're going to explore that kind of opportunity. The next slides, and I'm not going to bring this up and have a political debate, but you know what these are. We're living through the first stages of the 2016 campaign, and when you see these, you know what they stand for, and there's a connotation that's associated with it. But in their own right, both candidates are brands, and they both have strengths, they both have weaknesses, and again, not getting too deep into the weeds as to what those strengths and weaknesses are. Those visual components are what we express as the brand by one single visual element. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. What are the 10 most powerful brands? And when we talk about powerful brands, we're talking about how do we define power? And that is, Brand Finance did a study, I believe, in 2015, and basically they scored a company's investment in marketing as measured by goodwill of the customers, the staff, and how that marketing impacts goodwill on the company's performances. And here's what the top 10, and give you a little sneak preview. There was actually a tie at the top. So we just talked about Nike at number 10, Ferrari at number 9. You know what Ferrari stands for without, whether you're a car enthusiast or not, you know what that brand is. Rolex, another brand, stands on its own. Burberry, obviously, a quality brand. L'Oreal, Unilever, McKinsey & Company, Red Bull, which they've done a tremendous job building themselves up as a brand which is associated with excitement and energy and all of those things, kind of out of a little can, right? Number 2 is PricewaterhouseCoopers, but the number 1 brand is Lego. And there was a time not so long ago, maybe 10 or 15 years ago, where Lego was on death's doorstep. But they took a real hard look at what it meant to be a brand, what it meant for them to invest in better connections with their customers, better experiences. And Lego brand is really about creativity. And when you see this, you can say, yeah, well, those are those little plastic blocks, and if you're like me and have an 8 or a 10-year-old, they're everywhere that you go, and you step on them and they hurt your feet. But that's not necessarily brand. But all of the creativity, all the genius, all the things, all the connections that they've made with hit movies like Star Wars, those are great things that have supported their brand. So that's a concept of what we're working towards when you see. When you hear a name or see a name brand or see a visual, how does that impact us? So the number 1 brand in terms of market cap, if you will, although it lost it about a week ago for 2 or 3 days to Alphabet, which is the organization on top of Google now. But Apple, if you're an Apple user, whether you use an iPhone or whether you use a Power Mac or a MacBook or iPod back in the day, all of those things felt like something. When you go into an Apple store, there's a certain sense of presence, a sense of being, the rounded edges, the weight, the the girth, if you will, of their particular products, all are built on the same basic platforms, on the same basic premises. And what they've been able to do is connect all of those dots and make it very much their own brand. So what we're trying to aspire to is that same thing, whether we're designing a festival, whether we're designing a program, whether we're designing a performance series, however we're going about it, we need to understand what internally defines our brand, and how best are we going to be able to share that and connect with other brands that are going to help us be able to develop as we go along. So I'm going to just slide on into our next, for our festivals and events group. We know the Olympic rings. They stand for something, although they're slightly tarnished thanks to some of the things that have been happening, but out there in the world of competitive athletics. But certainly a brand that is international and stands across time. The Tournament of Roses, another brand that stands out, owns an entire day between the parade and the football game. Burning Man, of course, stands out. Kentucky Derby, white glove, tremendous. The heritage of something that's been able to not only be able to grow but also redefine itself, and it's the place to be on the I believe it's the first Saturday in May. So, brand definitions. If we're digging into this, brand is a promise to the consumers. It's, as I said, when we've shown those graphics before, those logos, it's what is the promise that I'm getting when I see your logo, when I see your name, when I hear your name? What does that stand for? Brand promise is more than tangible products and services. It's that feel. It's that sense when you see the Nike logo, and not all of these are positive, right? Everyone, anyone that's had a positive or a negative experience with a brand, sometimes the negativity creeps into that, and that's just what it is. That's that definition of a brand. That's why when you're talking to your staff and you're talking to your volunteers and you're talking to your employees and anyone involved, every one of those touch points it kind of adds up to the brand as we go along. Brand promise is more than tangible product, brand includes the feelings that consumers get when they use your product and service. Again, these are all provided to us by Brand Strategy, a firm that is one of the foremost in thought when it comes to defining brand across the entire spectrum, whether it's arts, entertainment, corporations, so on and so forth. So what are the feelings that consumers get when they use your product or service, and in our cases, when they're coming to our events, when they're coming into our buildings, when they're having a touch point with us? What is that sense? So some more brand definitions, and these are by some chief branding officers. This is a pretty big deal, especially in the corporate world. When you're in the C-level suites, there's a chief technical officer or technology officer. Yes, there's a chief marketing officer. A lot of firms now have chief branding officers. There are firms out there that specifically work only on branding, and there are some great ones that work with small nonprofits. And if you have any information or want more information, feel free to give me a shout, and I can connect you with somebody who works in the Philadelphia market. Great on this, great on training. But anyway, my aside there is, the Meyer Corporation, their definition from their CBO is brand comes to life through content and creativity, communication through tone, visuals, and story. That's one of the things that's been at the core of all of the work that I've been doing, is the fact that we are so lucky in the events, festivals, festivals and arts space, that we're creating content. That is what we do. That is our energy. So whether we run a one weekend festival, a one day festival, a month long festival, we have festivals throughout the year, whether we're an arts organization and we've got a season full of energy and excitement and enthusiasm, that is the stuff that we need to capture, whether it's through video, whether it's through photos, whether it's through messaging, however we can do that and kind of catalog that, archive that, and share that out over periods of time. That is the grist for the mill when we're building our brand during those times when people may not be paying attention to us, but still remaining on their radar. Union Bank CBO says the customer is the way to remember you. From JP Morgan, and this one really stands out for me. Brand is the public image or perception of a given company. More than just a logo or name, it's the embodiment of the company and the values to the organization or the festival. Those are all of the things that are being connected when we say brand. So it's somewhat high level, high energy kind of thing. It's really at the 25,000 foot level, maybe down to the 10,000 foot level. But our jobs, being involved in marketing, being involved in organizing these our specific day-to-day routines, we do get down in the grass and in the grassroots level of this, and we need to be able to connect better with our customers, with our consumers, with the visitors that are coming to us through our staffs and through our volunteers. The next step to all of this is the brand story. So once we have the brand established, we need to be able to tell that story. And Ann Handley from Marketing Profs, I just read this article recently and it really stood out to me. To meaningfully connect with your audience, to view the business organization as what it is, a living, breathing entity run by real people offering real value. That's what we do. And we need to be able to tell that story, that story of everything that we just talked about over the other few slides. This is now the story when we start to put all these pieces in place. We're going to start off by defining this as what your brand story is not. It is not your about page. It's not that page on your website that gives the history and the board officers, and that's not the brand. Those are just facts. It's not all about you. The brand story is about how it impacts the family that comes to your event or festival. It's about the enthusiasts that really can't get enough of the orchestra or the chamber group or the choir or the ballet. That is who the story is about. It's not a sales pitch. It's not your elevator pitch about how you raise money or how you sell tickets. Those are the things that kind of come along. That's not a brand story. And a brand story is certainly not static. It's not something that you say once and never really changes or morphs, because what we've started out with when we've had our first event is probably a lot different than the one that we're planning for this year. So how does that change? How does that morph? How do those things, and then how can we tell that story a little bit better? So that being said, we're going to go on to the next slide, which is what your brand story is. And that is, it is emotional. It is about that person that has come to the symphony every year and not missed a concert for maybe 5 or 10 years because they're so dedicated to the art form. It's about the target customer. And in our case, it's the attendee. It's the person who puts the date on the calendar a year in advance. When you announce when your event is going to be or when your performance series starts, that person is putting it out there and circling it on their calendar. They can't wait to attend. It's interactive. The brand story is what we're hearing back from the consumers, whether it's through data or whether it's through anecdotal evidence or conversations that you're having when you're on site or with your staff. And it's character driven. As Bernadette Jiwa says, your story is not just what you tell people, it's what they say about you based on the signal your brand sends. The story is picture made up of facts, feelings, and interpretations. That means the story isn't even told by us, right? It's out of our hands. And that's what that's what kind of this summary of our session here today was brand isn't what you say it is, it's what others say about you after you've done your best to put it out there. So I'd like to take a quick minute here. I'm going to take a quick sip of water. If anybody has any questions, feel free to raise your hand or type it in. Just anything on definition of brand. I know I kind of went through that fairly quickly. Or brand stories. Anything? I think we're looking pretty good. Very good. We'll continue on. So, why is brand important? Your brand is not what you say it is. This is kind of the segue back from the last slide. It's what others say, think, and feel about you, totally out of your control. Once they leave, once they've had their experience, once they've gone through each one of those touch points. So, what can we do to maximize that when they're on site? Brand is the promise that you've made with your customer. It's back to the promise. This is relatively touchy-feely stuff, right? It's relatively you can't really measure it. I mean, you can, per that other slide, when there was a countdown, but you're going to spend tremendous amounts of resources to do that. But just about anything that you can think of, you have some kind of ingrained notion as to what that means to you and what that means to everybody. So how do you make your brand stand out? Brand is not an achievement. It is clearly a journey. It is a place that we are going to take this pathway to tell the story of what our brand is. Between brands and sponsors, and I'm not going to spend too much time on this. We just recently did a webinar on the sponsorship component to events and festivals, kind of a higher level type learning. So I just wanted to take a little bit of time with the folks on the call here today to talk a little bit about, the sponsors align themselves with brands that are similar. When you're out there, whether it's you or whether it's somebody on your staff or a volunteer that's making that sponsorship pitch, you need to make sure these things align. And it cuts down on the wasted resources that go into trying to pitch something to somebody who might not have any interest. And it does pique the curiosity on the other side of the table. It piques the curiosity of the person hearing the pitch to know that you've gone to the extreme of doing the research on what model cars are driven by people who are likely to come to your event, or what beverage, if you're trying to align yourself in a health matters or a healthy capacity, that's a different discussion that you can have with your beverage partner, rather than just saying, hey, we want you to come out and throw up a couple of banners and do some sponsorship and it'll be a great day. But how do you get involved in their brand to connect it to your brand? And sometimes, and this is what's really exciting, sometimes those conversations accelerate faster than you could ever imagine, because you're talking on their level. So engagement and return on investment are always important, but when the brands are aligned, we're talking about deeper conversations between the sponsor and you as your festival and event is happening. But it's also a deeper level conversation between if they're on site and say they're tabling or say they're sampling or they're doing something couponing. Their presence on site is a little bit deeper when they're talking to the folks that are at your event or within your building or your venue. Successful activation for attendees and sponsors come from great connected brands and in our case properties. We'll call us that, sponsors and sponsorees. When we have a really good feeling about what's happening, and our constituents and our supporters are connected to what we're doing, and we know that they're going to be connected to that brand because they're health conscious following, or they're more likely to buy a specific product product or shop in a specific store, or support the local community more so than going to a chain or a big box. Those are the types of conversations that we want to have early on, so that when they're on site, there's a really tangible feel and a better activation rate. So that's about as deep as I wanted to go into brands, but I do know it's so important to festivals and events and what we do that I want you to take a thought, when you're kind of dreaming about that perfect sponsorship relationship. Set aside some of these things to figure out how those brands are going to best connect. What does the local Ford dealer, if you will, what do they stand for? And are they involved in the community? And are they involved in the arts? And does that make a lot of sense for them to be connected to you? And if so, maybe you can dig a little bit deeper, and maybe it's a triangulation between you and the schools and the dealership that makes a deeper relationship for everybody. So I'll just leave it at that. So where does your brand exist? Brand's not at the surface, right? I mean, we just talked about that. We saw Hillary's logo, we saw Donald Trump's logo, we saw the Nike logo. There's initial reactions, but you have to kind of go. You can give that immediate thumbs up or thumbs down, on everything. And that's your own personal perspective. But below that, it's the components that exist, that layers and layers and layers below, that define that bubble up to be that thumb up or thumb down. We need to recognize the main attributes that you want to build upon, as an organization. Operations are the widgets and the processes. That the operations are the things that the functionality. It's where do we put the tents, and how do we put the tables up, and how do we engage with the audience, and do we use iPads to collect data, or do we use palm cards? How do we interact? That's the nitty gritty. And for the course of our conversation here today, we're not really talking at that level. But their brand does seep its way through there. If you went to or if you, as a festival promoter, run something, and there's an iPad there, and that's how you're collecting data. That sends a different message about your brand than if there's a couple of Bic pens and a couple of postcards to fill out. Right? There's a different sense to that. So those are the kind of things, and either will get you the same data, but it sends a different message. That little nitty gritty is what we're talking about when we're determining brand. So brands are an intangible yet effect of all of these things, and they do affect attendance. It does affect income. It certainly affects sponsorship and volunteerism and the long-term impact of your organization. That's what we're talking about here. That this intangible that kind of envelops us, puts all of these pieces together, and eventually will dictate whether you grow fast, whether you grow slow, whether it's controlled, whether it's an opportunity to raise more money through sponsorship, because these are the relationships that you're trying to have, whether you have more volunteers coming in because they get a certain deliverable on the expectation of your brand that is positive. So now I'm going to give you a little bit of a top secret tour. Worked with a nonprofit organization, and we had a great consultant work with us on a pro bono basis who was involved with a major marketing firm, working on General Motors and some other top line beverage companies. And the experience that they shared with us actually made decisions that 5 and 10 years down the road have impacted this organization in a positive way. And what the next two slides I'm going to share with you kind of delve into, and this is a little bit of an exercise that I think you can do on your own to be able to fill in the blanks as to where and what your brand is. So this first slide is something that you can do, in an afternoon. It takes a little bit of thought. Maybe you drag a couple of your fellow staff members or board members, or potentially, just consumers, which would be great. And you talk about answering these questions. So brand utility is the benefits of the brand. So the social benefits are, how do people feel? How do others see me when I use this brand? If I go to your festival, am I going to be thought of as smart, creative, enthusiastic, energetic? You can see I'm using a lot of words that talk about. Again, it's not data driven. These are experiential, and they're emotional words. So the emotional benefits is, how does this brand make me feel? So not only do I want to appear one way to my neighbors, friends, and family, but how does this make me feel internally? Going back to what I said earlier with Nike, when you see that logo, and if you wear that shoe or you wear that apparel, that makes you feel a certain way. Maybe you're a little bit faster. You might not be on the stopwatch, but you might feel a little bit faster because you're wearing that shoe. Or you might feel a little bit healthier by wearing that Nike logo out, to run your errands and to go to the grocery store, the supermarket. You're getting it. You're projecting a sense of health, and you're a little bit cutting edge and a little progressive. That's a good thing. That makes you feel that way. So, how does going to your festival, or attending your concert, or attending the latest exhibition, how does that make you feel? The functional benefits is, what does your brand do? What does your festival do? What does your arts organization do? What do you provide a service to the community? Is it a gathering place for the community? Is it a way for the community to express itself? Again, we're talking about here. We're talking a little bit more functional, but you want to be thinking about the impact that you're having. And sometimes this gets into the mission and the vision of organizations. So on the right side of the ledger, you'll see what are who the brand is, right? That's what the brand identity is. Here's a little bit more historical. What's the brand's history and origin? We started in 1972. We've had 5,000 people come to our first event. We had 15,000 the next year, and we've grown ever since. So what are some of the things? We came together because the arts leaders in the area needed a showplace to be able to showcase their work for all the artists in the region, whatever that is. Kind of fill in those blanks. Culture and values. What are the beliefs and cultural traits of what's important to us? What's really, really important to you, and what makes you go, well, no, we wouldn't really go down that avenue. If we're a music festival and somebody's saying, well, you should really have a big water slide, that's probably not in a cultural trait of what you're trying to do. But think about that and fill in those blanks. This is a really important one, and this one makes you think outside the box. What's the personality of your brand? If your festival or arts organization is a person, what would they be? Would they be funny? Would they be a little sarcastic? Would they be a little tongue-in-cheek? Would they be fun-loving? Would they be loving? Would they be careful? Would they be indiscriminate? What are the words that you would go to be able to explain your brand, in this case, your festival, your organization, as a person? It's a really, really deep question. And a lot of us who have gone through the strategic planning process and the cultural planning process have done this work. And if you haven't, it's a relatively interesting experience. It's one of those things maybe on the ride in or ride home from work you want to give some thought to, or maybe taking a walk in the park. So I encourage you to do that and fill those out. And then, what is the one high-level statement that it describes what your brand symbolizes? What does it stand for? Our brand is blank. We are, our brand defines art in our region or our city. Our brand brings together families. Our brand is a place where community can enjoy the arts. What is that? What is the one thing that kind of covers up everything that you're talking about and what you do? So if we slide on to the next page here, we're going to talk a little bit about the communications architecture. Again, it's a little bit more of a project for you to work on and to fill in these blanks. What words do you use to describe your organization? You know, back to a little bit of that personality, but a little bit about what we do. You know, we're artistic, we're creative, we're welcoming, we're fun, we're zany. You know, what are those words that you want to kind of weave into the DNA of your festival? What do you do is pretty much simple. We have the largest arts festival in the region on an annual basis. You know, serving 150,000 people or whatever that number would be. What are the personality traits of your organization? Once again, we're talking about character. We're talking about if it was a person, what would it be? Then the next slide, the next chunk here on this slide is the target profile and the insights, the description of your audience. So first block is why your audience is engaged in your event. Second one is what facets appeal most to the audience. The third block to the right is how do you move your audience to support your event and organization. And then, you know, the fourth excuse me as I move my thing here. What aspects of your festival differentiate you from the competition? You know, so we all have competition. There's another festival down the street, or it's a different time of year, or it's a whatever, you know, whatever that challenge is. Or maybe the competition is the movie theater, or maybe it's the theatrical production that's running at the same time as your music festival. Whatever that case may be, what aspects differentiate you. And then when you get down to the key support, you can start to lay out as you address those four pieces, what are the four programs or the four initiatives or the four goals or the four objectives that you're trying to accomplish, and then what are the 4 or 5 bullet points to each one of those. So as you have your 4 features, you know, now we're going to turn it upside down and we're going to build from the bottom up. We're going to look at, you know, what events and features and programs substantiate all of that other stuff that's built on the top. So, you know, just as I said, we're kind of at a 20,000 foot level, but those of us that are engaged in the day-to-day operations, we've got to scroll all the way down to the bottom and say the work that we're doing down here is what can hold that infrastructure at the top. This is not for the weak of heart. You know, this is not an easy process, and you don't want to be going off half crocked on this project without the buy-in of others, you know, without people in marketing, without people in operations and finance and logistics and certainly leadership. But I think this is one of those conversations that you can have and say, I would really like to be able to follow this and see if we can make this work. And who knows, you might get a star for employee of the day or employee of the week. So, with that, I'm going to take another break and see if there's any question. I know I went through that incredibly quickly, and I apologize for that. But there's just a lot to be covered. So, any questions or anything that we can answer for you? Sounds good. Appreciate you following along. So here we go. We're going to talk about is your mission your brand? As we go into this, mission versus brand. We all know that so much has been written about mission and vision as we go. And it's really the mission and vision is meant for boards and committees and focus groups, and it's at a very high level. And again, you have more control over it, right? You have much more control over that than the brands that we might be talking to. Vision is where you want to go. Vision is that step of, okay, if we're aspiring to a mission, the vision's going to get us where is the pathway that we need to to find, where brand is where you are. So, if you're looking at this in the continuum, mission is very aspirational. Vision is a little bit more of a pathway, but the brand defines you, puts your feet on the ground exactly where you're at. Vision is the guide, but brand is the GPS, and that's going to tell you where to make a left turn, how to make a right turn, and where you go from there. You need to do the hard work to determine what the brand is to be. You need to identify those core values and components that we just talked about in those slides before, so that when we're defining this brand by the things that we have control over and the areas in which we have control, we can do a better job. It's creative. It's inclusive, and it's friendly. Those are all components that could be a piece of what our brand is. Fun, as I talked about before. It's social. It's engaging. Are these words that connect with you? Are they words that connect with your event or your festival or your program? The difference between the mom and pops and the wow sense, and we all have had this in our lives, right? The wow factor or the wow effect is the difference between the people who just kind of hang up the sign and go to work, and the wow are the experiential, well thought out concepts and execution of concepts. And that's where, as I said before, all of these little pieces, how the phone is answered, what the postcard looks like, how the brochure presents the materials, when you get on site, what does the signage look like, how am I greeted, where do I park, how do I park, all of those pieces. Where are the restroom facilities? The things that we may think of once in a while, all of that accumulates over a period of time to create our brand. Is the logo the brand? Yeah, we started out the session today, showing some logos, and a lot of people can kind of get a sense of what the business is by just that graphic representation. We know that that's the Pepsi logo. We know Coca-Cola is that logo, obviously written out. Southwest stands for something, right? It's love. It's that whole sense of democratization of airlines. Zappos, we all know that that's about customer service. They're going to bend over backwards. They're going to do whatever they can to make sure that you have exactly what you want. If that means they're going to drive 100 miles to deliver the pair of shoes to you, they'll do it. So logos are not the brand, but they're the representations of the brand. So logos are the visual identity. There's great thought and work to be put into that design, but it's not necessarily going to add. It's not going to necessarily be the deliverable. The activity surrounding that visual identity is what defines the brand. Logos and graphics represent what the customer expects and visually communicates that guarantee to them. So you see the Target logo, right? And you get a sense that, it's going to be fairly well stocked. It's going to be fairly evenly priced. You're going to have a Target experience by going into that store, or when you see that pop up on your smartphone as an advertisement, you kind of already have that baked in. I want the same thing to happen for you and your visual identity. Don't spend a tremendous amount of time on it. Usually the simpler the better. But if you can communicate a certain feeling by that visual identity, if that visual identity is a little convoluted, I think people are going to think your event might be a little convoluted. There might be too many layers to it. You might be trying to do too much. Those are all of the things that you have to be aware of when you're doing the logo. So how do we get a brand, right? Here, I'm set to go. I've spent 43 minutes on a webinar trying to figure out what my brand is and how I'm going to build my brand. So what do I do with this? There are a couple of ways to do it, right? Number one, we go out, we hire an agency. I'm sure there's plenty, within online, you'll see firms that'll come in and they'll do a week of testing and they'll do a lot of stuff, and they'll also spend a gob of money on creative development and campaign. Those of us in this space, we need to be a little bit more DIY. We got to do it ourselves. We got to kind of come together and round off those edges and be able to present in a little bit better way. The result is of all of that would be a dose of recognition. All of a sudden, okay, we're going to have a brand launch. We're going to have a PR. It's going to be on social. We'll do a big thing. But we're going to be usurped by the next big campaign with a bigger budget, a bigger this, a bigger that, a bigger everything. Probably not, in our space with resources as taxed, most of us working with nonprofits, there's only so much to go around. Brand is built over time, and I think this is what gets lost in all of this, with consistency and attention to detail. I think if you turn inwardly and do some of that deep thinking that we showed in those slides before, you're going to be able to come up with those answers. Not saying that if you have a branding volunteer on your board, embrace them, take them to lunch, schmooze them, see what you can do if they're involved in advertising or a marketing firm, and they'll be able to guide you through some of these things. But if you don't have that luxury and you don't have a full-fledged marketing department, it's going to be up to you to kind of connect the dots and figure out how this is all going to work. So the truth is, you already have a brand, whether you like it or not, whether you spend a lot of time on it or not. People feel a certain way, and if it's one of those things that you have a line out the door, virtually speaking, waiting to sign up for tickets to your premier event, then you've got a great brand. If you've got to really work hard at that, then you got to kind of turn inwardly and rethink that and kind of go through the steps of, all right, maybe we didn't do things, or maybe there wasn't a good experience. How can we fix that? How can we make that better? The key is leveraging the good part of the brand. Focus on the side that you can control, the things that you can, in order to create that sense in people's minds that that's a good place to go. I need to make sure that I'm there. I need to make sure that I'm putting that on my calendar from the first day that it's announced. That's what your goal is going to be, is trying to make sure that you have those people putting those red circles on their calendars. Of course, virtually no one uses calendars anymore. It's all on smartphones. But acknowledge and never lose sight of those key attributes. We go all the way back to that slide where we had the charts of what are the things that differentiate you from everyone else. What are the things that make you you? And when I say that, make your festival, and that's the important work that needs to be done. Keep those key attributes present wherever, and the more weird, the more offbeat, the better. And if offbeat is one of your goals or one of your key attributes, even better. If you're a fringe festival and you're kind of dabbling around the edges, embrace those edges, and people will find you. People will come to you. So whenever you're doing these following tasks, which we do every day, kind of in the back of your mind, think of those 3, 4, 5 attributes that make you different from everyone else. Whether it's writing copy, whether you're designing marketing pieces, whether you're posting photos, sending emails, pitching sponsors, meeting with volunteers, or placing on the map where the portalets are going to go. These are all really, really important components that when you start to stack them all up, it's not just one of them. It's not just 2 of them. It's not just 3 of them. It's 1 and 2 and 3 and 5 and 10 and 11 of these attributes, as they all start to come together, are going to define what your brand is. So brand is always there. Functions as your event's conscience. You can always think of it, back to that personification. If you had someone who was the master of the entire event or the entire arts organization, and was kind of looking over that, and their only job was to serve as the conscience. And this is an interesting thing that you can work with your staff and your volunteers on, is what would they be thinking if they saw that happening? how would we tweak that? How would we make that a little bit better? Those are the kind of things, and I know it feels a little, excuse me, it feels a little ethereal, but in this capacity, it's that overarching feeling of everyone that comes to your event. If they all kind of put their thoughts together about what their experience was, what would that result in? That's your brand. Brand always keeps you on message. Brand keeps you stay connected with your supporters. Brand is what you do, it's how you do it, and who you do it for, and how long you do it. So it's always there. And a lot of people say, "Well, I don't have a brand. I don't know where to start." It's already there. Already there. You need to embrace the components that you know and you can control, and then you need to rethink maybe some of the things that you can fix and make a little bit better. And lastly, who's doing it? So consistency is always the key. This is the key in advertising. It's the key in marketing, and certainly the key in branding. The enemy of apathy in building a brand is consistency. Apathy is the enemy. If you don't care, if people don't put in that extra sense of time and commitment to keeping the brand always there, always kind of in the back of your mind, it's going to affect. And I define apathy as just kind of backsliding into, well, we're just not going to do that. The consistency raises us up, and there's a certain attribute to that you want to be focused at that level for a great deal of time. More than just a style guide or a boilerplate, that's the easy stuff. That's the intangibles. We need to use this font. We need to use that color. We need to put this in that point size. Those are great things, and they do keep the visual consistency, and they do keep some sense of the consistency alive with us. But it's those intangibles again that kind of bring all of that to life. Consistency doesn't guarantee success either, but it sure makes it a lot faster to get you to where you need to go. Don't always try new things. That kind of works against the brand as well. I mentioned before, if you added a water slide component to a classical concert, those two things aren't going to work. They're just not going to mesh. And it could be the hip new thing to do. Snapchat might not be the best brand builder that you could possibly use because you're not really dealing with the millennial generation. But somebody somewhere said, I think you should be on Snapchat. Probably not the best use of your time or resources. And again, you're not getting anywhere faster, without delving into it a little bit deeper. So you may want to avoid not changing up things too much. Don't have to think of the next brilliant tagline or outdo last year's graphics. Create a viral post. Those don't build brand. They're lightning in a bottle. If they work even perfectly, they're only going to give you a short time impact. You need to be thinking a little bit bigger than that. Keep the things that work and then define them and refine them. You want to be able to massage that website to be a little bit better. It doesn't mean you need a complete revamp of the website, but you need to be able to take the things if we just tweak this a little bit more, it would kind of fall in line with what we're trying to do, because we're trying to be fun. And maybe there's a more of a fun engagement on your website than which carries over from your on-site presence. You can kind of manage those things. I've got a whole whopping 60 minutes here to cover this entire topic. A lot of this stuff goes a little bit deeper. Happy to answer any questions that you might have, or send me an email. Follow along as we're blogging and as we're tweeting things on branding and sponsorship. But I don't mean to kind of delve into all of this stuff and not give you some answers. So feel free to email me anytime with a question that you might have, or you join us for our mentorship program. Just going to take another quick time out here to see if there are any questions. I did need a little bit of water at that point. So I have another few minutes to entertain you here. Here's a quick brand exercise. And again, happy to share this with you. And happy to send this out if you just want to email me and let me know that you're interested. Um, this brand exercise is, I've sat in on a session in New York City with a branding firm called Red Antler. Been involved in some startups in the tech world, and 99U, if you've never checked them out, really creative folks. And they gave us this project and wanted us to kind of share this and spread this out to the rest of our networks and the people that we talk to. So the idea is, what is the problem that you are solving? So as a festival, you need to think of that in a little different meaning. We're trying to bring music to our community. I keep coming back to, we're trying to build the community through the arts, or through we're trying to create community economic redevelopment through the arts. So, what's the problem you're trying to solve? What's the brand vision? We just talked about that a little bit. Then you need to dig into the details. Write 3 or 4 paragraphs that explain your organization and your event. That can be a little bit more of a deeper dive. We run this every May. We have X amount of people that attend. We provide scholarships to students that are pursuing careers in the arts. We run a series of jazz concerts throughout the fall and the spring. So get into the depths then. And then the target, who's the audience? So think this through. Not only who your audience currently is, but is there some set of the programming that you're working on that that could be a new target for you? Back to, what's the personality in 3 words? We're fun, we're exciting, and we're zany. We all wear striped socks around up to our knees. What are the 3 words that you would describe if your event or your program or your organization were a person? If you invited them to a cocktail party, who would you sit them next to? And why would you seat them next to them? Then the next thing, and this is a little bit of a deeper conversation, a deeper piece, and that is, what types of imagery best represents you? They did this with us by having a whole slew of photographs cut out of magazines. So I might recommend doing that. You could kind of maybe just pull together an amalgamation of different visuals that you would use to describe to represent you. What's the visual territory to live within? This again gets a little bit creative, and they're based in the south end of Manhattan. So I guess these are the kind of questions that you ask when you're charging $200 or $300 an hour for creative work. What's the brand's tone of voice? Again, are you forward thinking? Are you aggressive? Are you loud? Are you more laid back, subdued, a little bit less, maybe a whisper, instead of a shout? And then what's the color typography, illustration, photography, design examples, icon, signage, all of that stuff that defines you? Kind of put that together. So what you're starting to do is create this mood board, which is what people think and what people feel about your organization, your festival, your event, and it gives it a more tangible effect. And you can have some really great conversations if you're doing it with the marketing person and the executive director, or your boss, or some board members, or some fans, some friends of the organization. So I've got about 3 or 4 minutes to answer any questions that you might have. So I'm just skipping here through the. I just skipped right to the end. Happy to answer any questions that you might have. There we go. As I mentioned, Aspire Arts and Events is a firm that we're dedicated to capacity building and professional development of arts marketers and people associated with events and festivals, whether they're professionals or volunteers. We have a series of more in-depth webinars that go on like this, but a little bit deeper. You know, some of these things that we are at the high level, we go down into the weeds a little bit more and answer some of those more technical questions. Then we have a mentorship program. So happy to answer any questions. It doesn't seem like anyone has any here today, but we were able to cover a good deal of information. As I mentioned, we're going to be we've recorded this one here for today, so we're going to have this online. And then there's another version of this, which we're going to present next Tuesday night, a little bit more directed towards festivals, events, and volunteer organizers that are going to be involved in that particular call. So if you know anybody who might gain some knowledge and on what branding means and how branding can affect their festival or event, please share that with them for next week. So there'll be a short survey you'll find after this, if you wouldn't mind filling that out for me, and then just let us know if you'd like to receive this deck, including those two slides or 3 slides of exercises for you to work on. So with that said, it's 2 o'clock. We came in right on time. Happy to stay online for a couple more minutes if anybody has any questions. If not, we hope to see you next Tuesday night. And we do have another session coming up in June, which is about collaboration between arts organizations, festivals, and we've been doing a lot of work in that area here in Allentown between arts museums and theaters and symphonies and music schools and art schools. So we'd love to have you join us for that. Thanks so much, and we'll talk to you soon.